going yet. What's that, Brew? I didn't hear you. The height of professionalism here at Hoop Ball. Well, at least it's not Hoop Ball. Those guys know what they're doing.
We got the sign going.
Yeah, we got the sign. In fact, our good friends in the chat room now have actually started to refer to the website as Hoop Ball, which is both good and bad.
This is graphics, man. This is the high-end graphics package that it was. I believe Dawson installed this, from Ithaca. When we do the show now, we got these graphics. It lets you know that you're watching Hoop Ball.
I can't get over how awesome the room is that you do this show in on Fridays. That you're just in this weird video purgatory with one paper taped to the wall behind you and a Save Jokic paper that's floating around somewhere. Is that still nearby?
It's become quite the note sheet, as you can see.
Is that a heart?
It's kind of like I'm jacked into the Matrix.
Yeah, you are in the Matrix.
But it's Hoop Ball.
It's Hoop Ball. What's happening, everybody? Welcome to Fantasy NBA Today Live. This is our Friday show. We always do it live on Fridays, or we do at least during the regular season. I don't know what our plan is for the postseason in terms of live or recorded, but it is important that we note this show will go through the off season. We had somebody in the chat room. I was watching it as Brew, you and I were getting situated here. I'm Dan Vespers. He's Aaron Brewski, by the way. Comment on how happy they were that we take things right up to the last day of the regular season. Apparently, there are fantasy sites that don't, which seems like lunacy to me. I could understand a fantasy site that maybe says, all right, we're done when the regular season's over because leagues are done, but not going to the end of the regular season, that's like, well, I mean, there's a lot of comparisons I could make, but they're all sort of PG-13 or worse.
Well, they poop out. And Poop Ball, we don't poop out. It's something that we pride ourselves on, is our ability to keep going strong, not just through the regular season, but also through the off season here at Poop Ball. And that's just kind of what I have to say about it.
This is Hoop Ball. I don't know why you keep pronouncing the P.
I didn't use a P.
You said Hoop Ball, didn't you? Did you say Hoop Ball?
Yeah, I said Hoop Ball.
Okay, good. Wait, Hoop Ball?
No.
This is going to get us a 2-star rating for sure. Thank you, by the way, to everybody for rating and reviewing the podcast. Brew, I don't know if I told you, we're up to 76 on this bad boy now.
That is the power of Dan Vespers, I might say.
That is the power of me getting down on my knees and begging people to do reviews. But I do have to say, though, it's actually amazing. I didn't realize how few reviews other podcasts have. Like, we've stormed past shows that have been around for 5, 6, 7 years.
You do a lot of begging, Dan.
I do a lot of begging, and I don't feel... there's a Temptations song that I'm quite fond of that illuminates that I am definitely not too proud to do it either. So thank you, by the way, to the 76.
The TLC song?
TLC? Did they have a song about begging?
Yeah, ain't too proud to beg.
You're kidding me, right? We're not doing...
I ain't too proud to beg. No?
No, I'm going 60s, man. Give me Motown or give me death.
Yeah, I probably just perjured myself of some sort.
I want my 1960s jams, and I want them all the time. But yeah, I mean, this is awesome. So thank you to everybody that's listened all season long and has been rating and reviewing and recommending the show to friends and liking the posts on Twitter and retweeting and whatever it may be. Obviously, listenership a little bit down right now because a lot of people's leagues are over. But we had terrific growth this year. I mean, to go from 0 to where we got by basically the week or two after the All-Star break was kind of that window where everything was going super strong has been awesome. And we have things to talk about in the offseason as well. There's going to be a whole month of mea culpas on this. I'm just bringing on every single guest we've ever had. And each one of them, we're going to sit down and say, well, what did we learn from this year? What did we get right? What did we get wrong? What are we going to make adjustments to going forward? Players, strategy, you name it. So there are things to talk about. And we're blasting straight on through. Brew, what's going on at Hoop Ball these days?
Man, over here at Poop Ball, we are having just an incredible time developing next year's stuff. Our development team is awesome. I can't thank them enough. Steven, in particular, has been great lately. We've moved to a new host. We've had a couple issues. I'd like to thank our readers for being so patient with that. It's kind of one of those things where there's really no good time to do this stuff. Overall, the new host has been good, so we're moving in on all this stuff we want to do next year, which is going to be a lot involving premium products, data-driven stuff, and really just kind of continuing to overhaul the website. That's dominating most of my time and thought process right now, as we trudge along and get into phase 2 of hoopball. And
hey, can I jump in and say that Brewski was kind enough to invite me into the development team Slack channel?
I was scared to do that, Dan, but I did it anyway.
And this is like, I mean, I don't have a sound effect for a gas, but that was like the ultimate fart in my brain when I saw that channel. You guys are not messing around in the development team. I saw the word GitLab. I saw the word Bitbucket. I saw the word repo, and it had nothing to do with giving a couch back to Furnitures R Us. I saw the word menufication. That's not a word, or is it?
Dude, you're giving away corporate secrets, man.
How do you menufy something? Do you make it so that you can order the tilapia for $18?
You can pretty much verb anything these days, Dan.
I want to hoopify it. Or
you can hoopify. You can hoopballify it. You can do whatever you want these days, Dan.
That was a bit over my head, but I mean this is something that you've talked about on this show a lot, and we're gonna get onto the basketball very shortly. But the off season for the NBA is kind of the development in season, because that's when you can focus on things other than just kind of maintaining. That's when you can grow.
Yeah, it's absolutely like a basketball player. They work on their game in the off season, and they come back next season with a whole new, bucket of tricks. That's, I actually cannot wait for the season to end. So, things kind of calm down for all of our contributors, because a lot of our contributors not only work on the tech side, but they also do basketball stuff. So, once the season ends and everything slows down is when we can start to really hit the go button on a lot of this stuff. But really, it's about winning leagues. It's about, on the season long side, how do we give you tools to help you win leagues, and how do we make the overall experience something that's customer centric, if you will, not so big boxy, that's kind of more driven towards driving eyeballs to TV and things like that. We want to drive value for you guys. And then on the DFS side is really just intriguing, because it's kind of a whole new world for me. I'm in it. I speak DFS. I understand what it's all about. I play, but it's not my thing. And I'm really immersing myself in that world, getting to know a lot of people in the DFS world, and kind of how they think and what makes them tick. And the two complement each other. So while we look for tools for season long, we're looking at the same exact stuff, maybe delivered in a different way for DFS. And again, this is all about helping you win leagues and compete, especially on the DFS side. Everybody that's out there, that it's competitive, and you have to have these tools in order to, if you're not a numbers guy, you still got to have tools that help you with the numbers to be able to compete against the numbers guy. You can know all you want about basketball, and if you don't have that in your stable, you're going to suffer a little bit, just like a numbers guy would suffer without the basketball knowledge. So we're trying to bring this thing 360 degrees, to our premium members, our regular free members, and that in its own is its own unique thing. And not to even, I don't want to sell the other stuff short. I mean, we're doing really cool things in terms of our pod network, which yours truly is running. And even on the journalistic side, we have up and coming journalists like Jake Fitzgibbon, where we're going to try to bring you guys a unique experience where, whether it's fantasy, not fantasy, general entertainment, all surrounding basketball, of course, we want to bring this to you guys as an independent website in a way that puts you guys first. Really, we want to put the content first, and I'm really excited about all that stuff. So yeah, it's been a fun week, and my fantasy teams are doing good too. So I'm happy all the way around.
So let me ask you this: to those that are hearing all of these projects that are in the hopper at Hoopball and thinking, I want some of that, but not others, is there going to be more compartmentalization? Is there going to be a way for people to sort of be able to easily find what they're looking for when there are all these things coming at them?
Actually, no, Dan, we're going to require everybody read everything. because we're an authoritarian regime here, and we just want to make sure that everything gets. No, it's going to be no. We're looking at all of the above, and really just kind of as with any website, you're going to iterate. One version 1, if you will, version 2, version 3, and so on and so forth. So you're going to see things just kind of continue to morph, and that's the benefit of, I think, how we've approached with this project is bringing on really good people that their passion is fantasy sports, their passion is building stuff and being creative, and everybody, like I said, we've got a great locker room here, so everybody's pulling in the same direction, and everybody just wants to do something really cool. I think that the way that this industry has been structured, there is a lack of innovation, if you will, because of the compensation models that drive everything. And we're hoping to turn that around and let innovation be the thing that kind of plunges ahead. And I think the people that are involved all see that vision and they want to be a part of it. So again, really, really rewarding. And I feel like we're just scratching the surface on a lot of stuff.
More stuff and easier to find sounds like a pretty good combination to me. We're getting, before we even get into the basketball stuff, I know I said we were going to, but the chat room is lighting up right now. And first of all, to those of you watching the show live and wondering where the chat room is, you got to navigate to the actual YouTube page. It's not, the chat room is not available on the Twitter embedded stuff, and it's not available at Hoopball, unfortunately. You got to go to the YouTube page that we've been tweeting out. And you can participate in the chat room there. You're getting a lot of credit, Brew, for something that the chat room listeners are calling your flu pod earlier this week. What are they talking about?
Well, Dan, I've been on drugs.
Yeah, so have I.
I can admit it. I've been on drugs, and
college was fun.
The drugs, the drugs have led me to some pretty good fantasy assessments, I have to say.
So you're like, this is Sudafed lucidity is what you're hearing.
Actually, it was your and your wife's fault. You guys said buy the Zyrtec D or whatever it is.
You gotta get the decongestant. That helps with the sinuses so much.
Well, it also gets me drunk. Yeah. I take one of those, and I do it rarely because it's like a 24-hour recovery. We've been getting in shape. We've been running, and there's all sorts of pollen kicking around. I had 4 days of no voice. That was terrible. I sounded like Marge Simpson on all my stuff. And then this last week, we're getting in shape, and I run through a bunch of trees and all this stuff. Anyway, got high on the meds again, and I think I had 100% hit rate on everything that I said, but I don't remember any of it. I don't even know what I said.
Yeah, I mean, you don't need to, man. It's it reminds me of that scene. I think it was in Old School, right, where Will Ferrell is in the debate stage, blacks out.
Yes.
Takes down the Raging Cajun. You don't need to remember it. So
you know what? Though I have a critique of what he did there. He didn't really say a lot. He just made it sound fancy.
Yeah, that's true. There really wasn't much going on in that one. But all right. So Brew's got a flu pod. Go listen to the Brewski box score breakdowns from earlier this week. The pollen is bad. It's so bad that even my baby has like a whistle when he sucks in air, but he feels fine. So it's that time of year, man. Spring is in the air, and pollen comes with it. The other thing that's going on is that I haven't yet revealed what's really not that fun of a shirt. This is going to be a letdown for everybody, but it was my first job, and I still have the shirt from it. So I'm going to crank that bad boy on, and everybody can see the first place that I ever worked as a teenager, Leslie's Pool Supplies.
Wow.
That's right.
That's right. That company is a big company, I think. I've seen them before.
Yeah, you pull a lot of weight.
Wait, you were the pool guy?
I was not the pool guy, but I was the guy in the back of Leslie's that did the water test, because they were like, well, they basically threw the nerd on it. They're like, oh, this guy's tall, not tall.
So you weren't the pool guy. You were the nerd that came out and assisted the pool guy.
Yeah, so everybody brought in their stinky water, and I took it into the back room and was like, all right, well, your pH is a little bit off on this, so you're going to need to get a little bit of the, a little bit of the acid. You're going to need to get a little bit of the, you need to chlorinate just a little bit more. And so I was like, I took the ball and I put it on the tee for the salespeople, and the salespeople were like, all right, let me get you these 15 things that you sort of need. And they were all kind of helpful. the pool was better if you bought all of the stuff, but they probably could have come in and gotten like one 10-ounce jar of slightly acidic stuff to put in your filter. And
can I make a plea to the fans? Can we start a donation for Dan's fun shirts?
I need more fun shirts. Yeah, Tiberius is right. The bed is not made behind me either. That's another problem with me turning the video on. It's busy, man. I'm busy.
Is that a picture of you and your wife in the back?
Probably. What are you looking at? Oh, yeah, back in the corner there. That was look at that. That's hiding behind some stuff. That was
nothing but the most professional for our listeners here at Hoosball.
Between your weird ass room and my actual room.
Hey, at least I have graphics. What do you got? Love? What's love?
Yeah, I got a picture from, I think that's an engagement photo back there. So that's from like when did that picture taken? That's like February of 2010 or 11. It's either 6 or 7 years ago. My hairline was like here in that photo.
You can wear a really thick headband, I hear, and it'll hide the effects.
Thanks, Bron. All right, let's talk a little bit of basketball. It's stretch run time. It's fantasy playoffs. A lot of folks are actually finishing up this week. Those that don't have the silly season week into the mix. And this is sort of a weird time as someone who's giving fantasy advice, because the moves right now are not as clear, perhaps, as they were a week ago, where you really wanted to maximize games. You've got some guys that are dinged up, like a Marc Gasol, who's been missing time. Those guys end up creating questions. You've got slumping teams. You've got teams about to get eliminated. You've got the Mavericks, one of those teams, who have already come out and said, like, when we are mathematically eliminated, not if, when we are eliminated, we're going to rest some veterans. Pretty remarkable stuff going on. I guess the writing's on the wall with that one, but usually teams won't admit it until after it happens. Brew, what are fantasy players supposed to do with the weird mishmash of information right now?
I think you just got to be aggressive. You got to have no allegiance to your team whatsoever, like no allegiance to players. And you just really got to kind of cut through the standings. We spend a lot of time on standings now in the Brewski box score breakdown. And then you kind of try to predict the future with that. You know, like I thought we were ahead of the curve on Memphis. So like, you know, I guess a theoretic thing is you're not going to count on Marc Gasol's production. You might not drop him because of the upside, but then you might look at your team and say, okay, there's a good chance Mark, Mike Conley, Tony Allen, Zach Randolph, that these guys won't be around to help me out. So then your corresponding move for something like that would pick up where that left off. And so that happens all across the league. I hate this week. I hate next week. I love it in the roto leagues. I mean, because you know, there's not as much weight on it. But yeah, this is really dicey stuff, and tons of ad drop stuff comes through the wire. So we just kind of roll with it. It changes every 6 hours. So, you know, that's kind of the nature of our business now.
So if you were in a head-to-head league that was still going right now, or even into next week, and you have a moves limit, which most of them do, the last couple of weeks, we've advised people to save a move for the weekend in case somebody goes down. Now it's almost a foregone conclusion that someone will be gone for your team over the weekend. Would you advise saving 2 or 3 moves because things are so finicky, or is it still one in the chamber for you?
I think it's still one in the chamber because I want to maximize games played, and there's going to be some real good pickups here. Like Yogi Ferrell's a guy that I think should be. I don't think he should have been dropped, and that's kind of a blanket statement that doesn't account for all leagues. But you know, you're going to see those vets in Dallas start to get rested. There's no reason not to play the kids. Even Seth Curry's a little bit dinged up, so you know that like if he's sitting on the wire, I'm not going to wait on him just so I can kind of theoretically have more moves available later on in the week. Now, something it should be said for keeping your flexibility to see how your matchup turns out. I probably leave like 1 or 2 in the chamber because I will say this, like this week, you might not have a next week. So let's say it's Friday, like today, and you've got Friday, Saturday, Sunday slate that you're looking at, and you got a guy that plays 2 games versus a guy that plays 1 game, and you're thinking I can get an extra game played, and that's I need field goal percentage. You might look at all the field goal percentage guys that are available, and pick them up over the course of the weekend versus, say, on Monday if you're looking at these moves. And the reason you're doing that is because you feel good that if you pile on the field goal percentage that you're going to win your matchup. You might not know that in the beginning of your week, because who knows? Like, James Harden is on the verge of resting. Like, if James Harden rests tonight, that could just drastically change somebody's stat set. Their free throw percentage could now be at risk because he's such a heavy free throw percentage guy. These are the weird things that happen during this week. So I guess I am a little more inclined to save some moves, but I'm still not going to do it at the expense of a hot pickup.
So still one in the chamber. Okay, let's talk about some of those.
Maybe two in the chamber. Two in the chamber.
One or two. All right, so Dallas then. They've already come out and said we're gonna kick some guys to the curb for some rest when this all shakes out. And they're obviously not alone. There are other teams that are likely going to be doing the same thing. There are a lot of question marks, and we're doing a little bit of guessing if we were to try to say, all right, well, who's the next domino to fall. New Orleans is very close to being eliminated, but there is something to them playing their guys together, even if it's in more limited minutes as opposed to alternating who has rest days or something like that. So it's tough to know exactly how it's going to shake out. Are there any guys, Brew, that you talked about Yogi Ferrell? If Dallas rests Wes Matthews and Dirk Nowitzki and possibly JJ Barea and possibly Nerlens Noel if he's been hurt, and you're looking for specialized categories at this time of year, like Dwight Powell, Salah Mejri, are any of these guys worth grabbing in advance of that day off?
You hit on the main ones there. Salah Mejri is going to be somebody that you look at for steals and blocks. He's been good in that role in the past, averaging about, about 3 defensive stats per game. As he peaks out, he can't really play a lot. Otherwise, he'll get hurt. But yeah, you're looking at him for defensive stats. The guy that I think everybody wants to go off is Dwight Powell. And Dwight Powell had a stretch of about 3 weeks in the middle of this year where he was a productive fantasy play. And he wasn't even particularly good during that time. So there was hope for his stat set actually kicking in. Here's the problem, though. Those 3 weeks, you're juxtaposing that against, 2 years of not producing when given the chance. So there's a risk. I mean, is he a stash candidate with 15 days to go, 14 days to go? Probably not yet, but maybe, after this weekend's matchups are done, you might say that's a good pivot point to say, you know what, even in a weekly fab budget situation where you go, you know what, they're going to rest their vets on Monday or Tuesday, but they're probably going to rest their vets a little bit more than that. Maybe I do take a look at Powell as a stash at that point in time, and then whether or not you can get him into a lineup fast enough, it comes down, are you daily or weekly, and all of those things that go into that decision-making process. But he's the guy where you're thinking maybe he could go for 16 and 8 and get you 2 money-counting stats per game, and that would constitute a win for you. But beyond that, I mean, DFS, I don't think, Finney Smith, he's been good in 35-minute stints. So that's really stretching if you're looking for value there. I kind of wonder, though. I do think it will end up being Yogi and Seth with the bulk of the production. And then that really bodes well for those two. Yogi has been, the recommendations have been to drop Yogi for the last 3 weeks.
What about the other teams that are kind of sitting on the bubble? Can we get the jump on them in any way? I mean, it's, there's a little bit of guessing here, but that's that kind of comes with the territory, right? Like Detroit finally won a game. I mean, it took everything in their arsenal to beat one of the worst teams in the NBA. They're in a free fall right now. They're 2.5 games back of Indiana for that last playoff spot, with, I think Detroit has 6 games left, and I believe Indiana has 7. So they could be eliminated in the next 2 to 3 games, potentially.
Yeah, I think I could, almost pick out a couple guys on the Pacers. I don't know, maybe a Monte Ellis could be somebody if they turn the page and they fall out. I don't know if they're going to fall out fast enough to help fantasy owners. Chicago, Denzel Valentine, Detroit. They don't really have anybody there that
Boban, perhaps a Boban sighting.
Boban, because Aaron Baines is not going to be there next year. So maybe they did go to Boban, and that would be somebody, if I need a big man, I would have him on the watch list at this point in time, because they're so close to falling out of this thing. They're imploding. And we spent a lot of time on the Cos and Brew show this morning talking about that particular aspect. In Charlotte, you're going to look at Jeremy Lamb is a guy that if they fall out of it, they could cut him loose. And then everybody below that is already in their equilibrium. In the West, everybody in that's below Denver has sort of reached their equilibrium, though, like New Orleans. Big game tonight for DeMarcus Cousins and the Kings. I think a guy like Jordan Crawford should already be owned, but he hasn't been let loose just yet. In Dallas, we already talked about them. And then Minnesota's got the 5-game week. Chris Dunn's got to be owned across the board. So not as much of that. It's weird. Like, I was asked about tanking with your old friends over in ESPN Vegas and the Wager Talk. Like, there's not that many tanking teams this year. And this draft is, I'm not a draft guy, but it's apparently one of the best drafts we've seen in years. So really, like, counting teams that have been tanking, the Lakers, the Suns, the Kings lately, and then really the Wolves didn't intentionally tank at any point in time. We know Dallas didn't tank until, this week. And, in the East, you really just have the Nets, the Magic.
Do the Nets even get their pick? I feel like they don't.
I don't think they do. I mean, it hasn't felt like they're tanking, really. I mean, they've been playing guys kind of just to see what they've got, but it's not like these overt tanking situations that you've seen in the past. The Magic, I don't think they've been tanking. You got a GM that's playing to win and a coach that's not really into tanking. And the Knicks are unintentionally tanking. The Sixers aren't tanking.
No, they tried. Like, this is where they were like, let's see what we got. And they played pretty well for stretches.
For all the talk about tanking, it's not happening this year.
What about, okay, so, it's a tough one. What about teams that are on the inside looking out? Is there a possibility that you see any of those teams start to rest some of their guys? Like, okay, so the West, the Warriors are now up 3.5 games on the Spurs after that road win in San Antonio. That changed things a little bit. Golden State is playing well, like really well. Again, they've sort of adjusted to the no Kevin Durant. Steph Curry's come out of his slump, and then, of course, everything else fell into place after that. Golden State, if they rest guys, we've seen this before. It didn't seem like anybody was, unless they rested everybody, and then Ian Clark had a big game. But San Antonio, Houston, Utah. Houston, I think, is one of those ones where they're really locked into a spot. They're like 5 games up on and 5 games down on either side of them. And then over in the East, you've got teams actually battling up near the top, and then you've got like this weird situation in the middle where Atlanta and Milwaukee have a little bit of buffer territory. Maybe with the fact that I had to talk about it for that much means that there isn't going to be all that much rest going on. But Golden State, San Antonio, Houston are the ones that kind of jump into the front of my mind.
What we've seen is you've got 2 tiers in the East. And the Cavs, by virtue of all they're losing, have made it interesting from their perspective on rest, because they could not care about it at all and just rest guys and just live with whatever happens. That's option A for them. Option B is that they try to turn around some of this bad play. And also they have a lot of guys that have returned from injury. So in their minds, it could be better to try to assimilate them all back into the program before they get into the playoffs. So I kind of think they're leaning towards not resting a lot. Like, they might rest here and there, but not like a large scale resting situation. But Boston's going to play for seeding. Washington's going to play for seeding. Toronto's going to play for seeding. And then in the bottom part, only 2 games separates them from 5 to 8. And you got the Bulls with playoff Rondo in the mix. Those guys are all going to be playing hard until what will happen is there'll be a couple wins and losses that split this thing off. And next week, I think you'll see more rest scenarios in the East. Right now, it was even tighter about 3 days ago. Give it a couple days, and I think you'll start to see, like the Hawks might separate in the 5 seed, or the Bucks might separate in the 5 seed, and so on, and get these kind of natural resting scenarios. But again, a lot less in past years, or a lot less this year than in past years, and it's still a lot to deal with. And then on the West, way more stratified, if you will. The Warriors, I think, will rest here and there. They've already come out and said they're not resting really anytime soon, but I think they'll change their tune heading into next week. But again, they got to bring back Kevin Durant. So you might, as a team, say, well, we'd rather get into a rhythm with Kevin Durant in the regular season versus in the playoffs. The Spurs are total rest risks. The Rockets, if you get James Harden sitting, then you build a case for rest. Whereas before, prior to this wrist injury, their philosophy has been, we want to keep fine-tuning this machine so we get into the playoffs, we give ourselves the best chance to win. And then in the bottom of the West playoff picture, really it's just the Jazz and Clippers fighting for space. The Thunder are kind of in their own tier a little bit, and then the Grizzlies are in their own tier.
Yeah, it's weird. The West is strange. Okay, a couple of players that I wanted to ask you about, and then we'll turn our attention over to the chat room. Kyle Lowry, a couple of weeks ago, wasn't really worth talking about. Maybe even last week wasn't really worth talking about. But now we're starting to get into that window. We got a report earlier this week that he's shooting with the hand that was injured, that they do want to try to get him back for a couple of games before the regular season ends. Well, I got news for you. There are only a couple of games before the regular season ends now. Toronto has 7 games left over the final 2 weeks. If they want to get him into 4 or 5, that's soon. Do we think he's coming back next week? Is that the target?
The beat writers don't know. Like they keep this stuff really secret in Toronto. And so I feel like we could get a report any day that he's going to be playing on that next day or that night. And so in a weekly league, if you're looking at next week, if you got your league wrapped up, obviously I think you want to pick him up. It's all risk reward with this stuff, but yeah, I think he could play next week. I hope he can, because I've stashed him in a couple places.
Yeah, I stashed him too. I couldn't figure out why he was dropped in my Roto League, where you got a games cap. Just stuff him at the end of your bench and wait to see what happens. But anyway, I did the same thing with Kevin Love, and now I've got an outside shot at jumping up to that top spot. Movie Dude just asked the second question in the chat room that I was just about to ask anyway. Earlier this week, I went on air and I said, was Kent Bazemore playing hurt for like half of this season? Is that what we just found out?
It's so possible, because it seems like he's got a long-term knee issue. He goes out, he takes a week off, 2 weeks off, and he comes back and his knee feels good, and he comes up, putting up these blazing numbers. So I think he goes through, a month or two of feeling good, and then that knee kicks in, and then he starts to struggle, and they go, okay, we got to give this guy a break. It's not guaranteed that that's what's happening, but it sure seems like that's what's happening.
That was mind-boggling almost to see the way that he played in those 20 minutes against Philadelphia. He looked like a guy we've seen but for 1 or 2 games this season. I mean, Brew, I was on the get off the Bays train back in November. I was like, there's too many guys playing wings. He's been inconsistent. But now I almost feel bad if I was calling him out and he was hurt the whole time.
It's very possible. And even like listening to interviews like he went on with Bob Rathbun before he came back out of not this absence, but the one before. And he just said, yeah, I had to get my knee to feel better. And so there's just a lot of evidence that points towards there being a knee issue. And I wouldn't be shocked if you hear something like, he's going to have like a clean out surgery or some sort of a repair of a patella tendon, something like that over the summer, and hopefully he can head these issues off the pass. Also, people don't realize he's a little bit older than people think. He was 26, I believe, last summer when he signed his deal. So a little bit of wear and tear and mileage on those knees.
That was I'm actually in a stark and unexpected twist. I am now back on the Bazemore wagon, and I talked about this on a show earlier this week as well. So I don't want to repeat myself entirely, but for me, this is one of those situations where, and I'll kind of quote,
you're flip-flopping, Dan.
That's right. I said I'm 100% in favor of flip-flopping if, as the dude has let us know, new bleep has come to light, man.
That's good. I like that.
New bleep has come to light.
Yeah, it's absolutely. You have to get off bad predictions. And it's not that your prediction was bad, but if things change, I should say, you have to get off it. You cannot just blindly be like, Doyle rules, Zubac rules, Levert rules. You have to be like, okay, new information. Let's bring it back.
Oh, Doyle, I got a feeling your whole family's going down.
It's so true, too. It's so true.
One thing that people need to remember about Kent Bazemore is when he's right, he is a very unique stat set kind of guy. So I don't feel bad about saying get off that wagon. He was bad this year. He was a top 150 guy. But if he's suddenly healthy, he was a guy that can do.
A top 150 guy, but you needed him to be top 75, and you kept sticking him in your lineup and getting top 150 results, which effectively is a loss.
Yeah.
And that's what happened with, like, there's a couple things that I'm in our shows where we do our mea culpas, like Aaron Gordon is one of those guys that just crushed me this year because he thought he was a guard. And people said, oh, you got to shoot threes and all that stuff.
I don't even know if you can put that in past tense. He thinks he's a guard.
I swear to God, even that happened when I was like a kid playing CYO ball. The big, 6-foot center would be like, I'm shooting threes. And coach would be like, shut up. You're not shooting threes. You suck.
All right. So Bazemore, maybe he doesn't get back to the 5 rebounds he grabbed last year because Dwight Howard is around and that's what he does. But the shooting percentage is down 3%. Steals are about the same. Blocks are actually up this year. You're looking at a guy, if healthy, if his minutes come back where they should be, and if Cephalosha and Millsap continue to miss time, and obviously there was the trade of Kyle Korver, and so there's an availability there. You're looking at a guy that could sort of be like Danny Green plus down the stretch, a guy that could give you threes, steals, and blocks if healthy. Is there a way to know, Brew? Or are we?
I think typically, based on his history, he comes back and he stays healthy at a minimum for 2 to 3 weeks. And so I feel like he's a must-add player, in some – I can't throw that term around like that at this time of year because you might not need his stat set. But, like, all things equal, he should be owned in 12-team leagues. I'd have a hard time not adding him if he was available.
Yeah, it's tough not to need a stat set that's kind of – basically everything.
he can get light in certain categories. Like he's inconsistent across the board. Like there will be categories he'll have 0 rebounds in a game or 0 assists, and that you kind of look at the stat lines all sideways. He'll get like 20 points, 4 threes, and a couple steals, but still that's 20 points, 4 threes, and a couple steals is good for you. So, anyway, on board.
I have flip-flopped and I feel fine about it because new bleep has come to light. All right, let's take some questions from the chat room. Those were the guys that I wanted to go over before we look to the people. And as the chat room opens up, it does say you got to give the people what they want. All right, Chris Penfield has kind of a difficult question, so get yourself ready over there. I hope you've got the Save Jokic paper set and the pen on hand because we are digging in. There's the pen. There's the paper. Let's do this. Again, to those of you listening to the recorded podcast, this is a show done live, so some of the visual jokes may not land, but we encourage you to watch this show when we do it next Friday. And then if you don't mind just listening, subscribe to all of the podcasts here at Hoop Ball. Fantasy NBA Today, Brewski's Box Score Breakdown, DFS Today with our good buddy, our young friend.
He's 6'6". Did you hear that? He's 6'6". We have a center for our basketball team.
You've also got a coach because I can't play.
That's so true, man. So will you coach us up?
Yeah.
Should I start lobbying for minutes right now?
Absolutely. I've got my Don Nelson suit ready to go.
I can't do much anymore. I would like to play point guard.
That seems fair. I'll give you that role. Finals week, 1 move left. Oh, the pressure is on. Chris needs points and steals, and he's picking from the following guys, most of whom have 1 game, and I think the Kings have 2 left, so there's one of those in there as well. Points and steals, Monte Ellis, Kent Bazemore, Taurean Prince, who I keep wanting to call Tayshaun, by the way, because when I see
I've called him that every single night this week. It's a sickness. Go on.
Man, they need to write that whole name out. Larry Nance or Garrett Temple. And Temple's obviously got the game's edge, but does he play in both of them? So does he even have the game's edge?
So we had Nance, Temple, and Prince, and
Bays and Monte.
We got Bays in the mix?
Got Bays in the mix.
Okay.
Decent options here.
Yeah. These are all. I love what Taurean Prince is doing these days, but points are not exactly his strong suit. I mean, Bays would jump off the page right here. This is exactly in his wheelhouse. Yeah, I actually don't need to think about this too much. I'm going to do Bays. Let me just quickly look at the games played situation, though, because Atlanta, we got...
Looks like they're in Chicago tomorrow.
On Saturday, and they got Sunday. Yeah, I'm going to go Bays.
Bays. Let's see. Thanks to you guys, I'm on the verge of getting to the mountaintop. I can see the promised land in my view, and it looks so good. What two Brewski special players are getting me there? Nikola Jokic, and get this, Josh Richardson, who actually did have a couple of good games.
Yeah, I can't take credit for the Richardson stuff because I did recommend a drop a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. If you held on for 21 weeks.
If you didn't listen to me at the final moment. Yeah, no, it's good to see Josh do this. I mean, it kind of verifies that he is what he is. It's helping in playoff leagues, and it's helping owners that added him. A little probably frustrating for those of you that, like, if you held on the entire time and then you drop him and then finally he starts doing good. A little bit of a bummer there, but yeah, glad to see Jokic is helping everybody out. I'll say this though, he's old news. Yeah, he's old news because Richaun Holmes is
Richaun Holmes. That what a beast!
Like, I can't, a monster.
He put up that last line against Dwight Howard.
He does it effortlessly. Like, you can barely notice him. He just kind of ducks in, gets 2 points, doesn't really miss things. Gets you a steal block, and then obviously the points and boards. It's just a beautiful thing.
Can I tell a Richaun Holmes story that I think most of our listeners and you will probably go, okay, I've been there.
Yeah, absolutely.
It starts with, of course, Richaun Holmes' calf cramps during that last ball game. Were you watching that live?
No, I was not. Did he have calf cramps?
He had calf cramps right when he was coming back in for his fourth quarter minutes. And my wife was trying to tell me something. I still, to this day, have no idea. Not a clue. One word that she told me in that conversation actually logged in my mind. My eyes were glued to the TV screen, and they cut over to him, and they showed Richaun Holmes chugging like the G fluid, whatever the Gatorade, whatever they call that garbage these days. And I took a deep breath, and I turned, and I went, what?
It's going to be okay. It will be okay. He is, like, between, like, the combo of players that we've kind of all picked up at the same time, Nurkic, Richaun Holmes. I know Big Sauce has fizzled a little bit. Who else are our big ones? I can't recall. Oh, like Terrence Ross. Everybody dropped Terrence Ross a week and a half ago.
By the way, Zubac's out for the rest of the regular season. While you were talking, that tweet came across. We sort of knew that was happening, though.
Yeah, and you know what? I feel like I'm going to be really proud of our waiver wire recommendations this year, and our in-season recommendations as well. I haven't looked at the season-long stuff. I always do a post-mortem on my own picks. I kind of leave that to the end. It's kind of like I leave my score, like I look at all my stat trackers at the very end of the night. It's like dessert for me. I go, okay, I kind of know what's happened with everybody, but then I'll look at them and I go, yeah, okay. And it's been fun. Like the teams, I shooting up the standings is just a great feeling. And, Richaun Holmes is definitely a big part of that.
A huge part of that. Anybody on the Lakers you're looking at? It seemed like Tariq Black and Thomas Robinson kind of, I don't want to say split. Black got more of the minutes at center. Larry Nance is in the mix as well. I mean, this was one of the problems with Zubac. There were too many centers over there.
There's too many centers. There's also too many young players that, quote, need development. And this is one of the reasons to kind of fade that whole, like, you got to pick up Zubac, if it was the last thing you did on this planet bit. There's D'Angelo Russell, Jordan Clarkson, Julius Randle. Those three guys are still corking up all sorts of shots, handling the ball a whole bunch. It's not like develop Zubac time. Now Nance and the Tariq Black, I'm more leaning towards Tariq Black, believe it or not. I feel like Nance is either hurt or something's up with him, and he's always hurt. So Tariq has been under the radar good this year, and again, this is terrible. These are terrible options in fantasy leagues. I think in a 14-team league, or if you're just absolutely trolling boards, steals and blocks, that kind of thing for Tariq Black. Nance has the better stat set and the better upside, but we just haven't seen him do anything in months.
Yeah, very true. All right, back to the questions. I saw that tweet and I figured we ought to address it before we continue on forward. Here's a question. We're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but Faisal says, I have no more ad cuts available. I'm only here to support the culture and ride the week out. I have a question, and it is this. Who has made your will not draft list next year after what we saw this season? His examples are Nerlens Noel, Jonas Valanciunas, Derek Favors, and anybody on the Thunder.
Oh, jeez. You know, I'm trying to think of a player that's really bit me. And maybe it could be Aaron Gordon. It could be, I mean, those are great examples. Like, I'm not on board with the Nerlens thing because I think, he's young and we probably shouldn't put him on that list just yet. I understand the sentiment. And Jonas, if the market corrects on Jonas, I absolutely draft him. I mean, sometimes
draft him in like the 7th or 8th round instead of the 4th.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the market will always overcorrect itself, and that's where you got to be there and pick up the value. So I have a hard time with never draft type stuff. But I mean, examples in the past, like Myers Leonard, never draft again. Like, we know what he is, and the pain and the suffering are just too great to bear. I think it might.
Of the ones listed there, the Thunder is the closest in my estimation to like, I don't know if I can draft this guy because the question mark of can someone coexist with Russell Westbrook is such a huge red crazy question mark that is it worth rolling the dice like that?
I think there will be a time in Russell Westbrook's career where he coexists with teammates. I really, truly believe that. I think it's all part of his progression. I thought that Scott Brooks completely mangled that team. And now he's learning stuff he should have learned 5 years ago. So with that in mind, I don't even look at it that way with the Thunder. I feel like Steven Adams showed some really good upside, maybe could be banged up toward the end of the year. Victor Oladipo eventually I think will kind of peak out. I don't think he's peaked out as a player yet. He's been good down the stretch. And so I don't know. I'm really struggling for that. I'd have to I'm going to blurt out an answer to that question after I answer a different question from somebody else.
That's fair. Or, I mean, like I said, we're doing a month of shows where we had things right, things wrong, and go through in the learning process. So we'll probably.
It's Gordon. It's because he's not going to play the type of game that's going to give him fantasy value. He needs to be a dunker. He needs to be an offensive rebounder. He needs to be, everything that he's not being right now. And if he continues to trend in that direction and try to follow the ways of, everybody's got to shoot threes, the fantasy value just won't be there.
Yeah, that was some very light feedback coming from an internet glitch. Fear not, we are on solid ground. Next question on the chart as we slide on through. It's Avenue SCRW says, I just found Hoopball a few days ago and signed up for a premium account. I take it everybody here endorses this move. Heck yeah, we do. Is that the dude in your profile picture? That'd be a pretty good... I can't believe I quoted Big Lebowski in a day where we may have the dude in our chat room. Stephen M. made an appearance in the chat room. He said hello.
What's up, Stephen M.?
And then we lost a few people to go watch Sean Spicer on television. That was earlier on.
I feel neglected. Like, if you guys are going to leave to watch Sean Spicer, at least bring me with you.
You're going to have to twist yourself into way more pretzels, Brewski, if you want to get these people back to watch you instead. Let's see here. Hard to believe that in 3 days this will all be over and I'll have to find something else to do for 16 hours a day. I actually had a baseball draft yesterday. I am horrible at fantasy baseball because I've spent the better part of a decade watching only minor leaguers, and it occurred to me as I did a baseball draft yesterday that I knew like the top 15 players and then like the handful of guys that played in the California League, and that was it. This is some of the best fantasy basketball I've played in a while. Normally, I'm full of hate and regret around this time. Now I've got 2 teams in the finals. There's a lot of things happening right now, Brew. Not many of them are questions. Mostly people saying, thanks, I'm in my finals.
I like the hate and regret part. That's awesome.
That's our buddy Movie Dude. The most liberating thing about fantasy was finally being in a position to cut JV. Of course, he does great things when I do, but it's championship week. I can cut without any regard for human life.
It feels good, right?
There's a morbid end to that post.
We do have some morbid listeners, Dan.
Yeah, I love it. That's fine. I started talking about putting guys out to pasture on the pods, and I saw that catch on. Somebody used that in one of our blurbs yesterday or this morning. I thought, excellent. All right, so we're taking Lassie out back, and everybody's getting put down. Hey, Nikola Mirotic. There's a question about Mirotic in the chat room, and I am so mad right now because you know how I feel about him. He's my other John Henson, where I pick him up and I drop him 6 to 7 times a year. And of course, he's going crazy the last 3 weeks of the season like he does every year, and I'm not the guy that picked him up. I'm so upset. I'm like beside myself with sadness that after all these times that I picked up and dropped him, that I, like a moron, forgot that he only plays well the last 3 weeks of the regular season. So, oops. Dang it. What do you got on Mirotic? Is this going to last throughout the end of the regular season? Does he have 6 or 7 more games in the chamber?
It might be Devin Booker that I regret drafting most.
You did say that you were going to blurt one out.
No, you're not going to. I don't know. I think Mirotic is in a good place mentally. Like, the confidence is there. And that's kind of the thing with the NBA is it's not just limited to him. It's, I'd say, a good 50% of the league, will play better with, distinguishedly better. Like he has been just crap all year. No, the team hasn't given him any sort of like, hey, we value you. We think you could do it. Like any of that. He's just been on the outside looking in, and now they're kind of forced to use him because of attrition, and it's all just kind of culminated in, okay, I can play again. Oh, and by the way, this is what I do when I play well, and you get 28 and 10. And I just think at this point in time, they're not going to mess with this. They got to make a playoff run like now. They can't be messing with Bobby Portis versus Nikola Mirotic all that much. Like, you could play the hot hand, but you're going to risk then any chance you have of making the playoffs or even making any noise in the playoffs kind of rest on Nikola Mirotic being a thing and being good. So I think they roll with it in Chicago. So I'm fully behind it. It just, that there's risk, but I like the risk.
In a Roto League big on double-doubles, would you favor Aminu, Nance, or Tarek Black?
Aminu, Nance, or Tarek Black. If it favors double-doubles, it's going to be Tarek Black. I mean, it depends on how much it favors the double-double, but like if that's its own unique category, then a double-double is quite valuable. So Tarek Black is really the only chance amongst that group of getting a double-double, and that's kind of what he does. He gets like 8 and 9, with a steal and a block. I don't know how many double-doubles he'll actually get. I mean, between now and the end of the year, I'd say maybe gets 2, 3 tops. So that's your that's your measurement. How much does 2 to 3 double-doubles help you in that format? Because if it's not helping you that much, I'd probably just go Aminu because he's capable of having a good game. I don't really buy his overall value. I think that they're going to all seesaw there, but he's got a better chance than the other two guys in a standard league.
We are 50 minutes into the program, and you know what that means. It's time for the lightning round.
We need a nap.
Well, yes. I could use a glass of warm milk. Well,
my fingers hurt.
Well, now your back's going to hurt. We got to thank you, or largely you got to thank you for talking one of our listeners into keeping Trevor Ariza, although I think you and I were on the same page on that one. He's as streaky as they come.
Don't piggyback my fame, Dan.
He has 15 steals in his last 3 games. That is... Now I'm looking back and wishing that maybe I hadn't spent games on other guys that ever get steals in my Roto League. If I would have known that Ariza was going to get 40 in his last week of the regular season, then that would have been a lot easier to take. But yeah, he's coming on again. It's always the same with him. He has a slump, he has a hot stretch, and it averages out to about top 40, or right around 40, in fact. So don't bail on Trevor Ariza. You know exactly what you're getting on that one. This, by the way, was where the flu pod discussion came into the chat room. I had jumped ahead before because I thought it'd be funnier to talk about before we got into our actual discussion. And let's see if I can scroll through it and find ourselves another question. Should I drop Victor Oladipo for 2 games of Taurean Prince or Denzel Valentine? 1 game for Victor, 2 of Prince or Denzel Valentine? That's a pretty good question.
It is a great question. And so if we're talking just purely, like, we're not punting, we're just talking standard leagues, I'm going to go with Torian. A lot of faith in that kid. Not so worried about players coming back. And if they do, he'll probably just slide into a 20-minute role, and he still has a chance to get you those defensive stats. You're going to be looking for Victor Oladipo. You're going to be looking to get like 19 points, like 3 trays, something in that ballpark, a few rebounds and assists, and maybe a steal. I think it's pretty fair to expect Prince to get, 12 points per game in those contests if he's playing anything close to 20 minutes per game. I think he's going to get the same amount of points. He's probably got better, defensive stat ability, and then you have the upside potential. If he actually does better than just a low end line, then that's where you really win. But I think he'll equal Oladipo in those 2 games no matter what.
Quick follow-up on Bays versus Torian Prince, which is good. We're spending some time on these guys today. Do you think Bays will sit out Atlanta's back-to-back coming up?
It's a possibility. I guess you got to kind of weigh it no matter what with the knee thing. But they're in the thick of this, man. Like they got to win games, and they're just now, pulling up out of a 7-game losing streak. I kind of don't feel like they take their foot off the gas. I'm going to predict that he plays. And as far as who the better play is, I already forgot the other guy.
Well, I was just talking about Prince versus Bazemore.
Yeah, Prince, that guy. Tayshaun is great. I would probably, if I had the choice between the two, I'd probably take Bays. I feel like he's got that kind of top 75 upside that Torian, while he has it, it's asking a lot of him as a rookie to do that. And then you also do have to factor now there is Bays back in the fold. And then, what if we have a surprise appearance from Paul Millsap or whatnot? Like, those things would theoretically work against Prince and eat away at that upside. So I'd go Bays over Prince, but it's pretty close. And I actually, I'll say this, I've said this in the pods too, he's not Kawhi Leonard, but I do think that there could be a similar trajectory to his career in both reality and fantasy. And I think he'll probably be on a lot of our squads next year.
Jim Collins saying that he's going to crowdsource this weekend. Not a question in fantasy, but he's going to try to get all of his son's friends to rate and review the pod. We are enlisting the help of a younger generation.
I love it.
Jim Collins, you are our winner. You're officially today's sponsor. You're the sponsor of today's show for that idea. And if anybody else does the same, screw it. You can sponsor the show too. Who will be next year's Jokic? That's an impossible question, right? Or do you have something up your sleeve already?
Well, could be his old teammate in Denver. Yeah. I mean, I'm not, Nurkic, there's certain skills that haven't been unlocked with him that I think he's capable of having. Free throws being one of them. He's not going to have, Jokic's stat set is just so out of control. To be that efficient requires your ability to shoot so well and to be able to generate easy shots at the rim. I'm really going to have a hard time finding that kind of a stat set. So next year's Jokic will probably...
You're just going to have to wait for the B150, aren't you?
I think so. But maybe somebody like Willie Hernan Gomez. I don't know. That when I saw Jokic at the end of last year and kind of started tracking him post All-Star break, I mean, I literally immediately thought to this year and said to myself, "Oh God, you might kill yourself with this pick because you might go so high that you overdo it." But I mean,
yep, here we are. Do you think Jamal Crawford is a good bet for 20 points against the Lakers tomorrow?
That's my kind of bet right there. It's right on the borderline. He had 19 last night. They could rely on him heavily in a game like that. I'm gonna take that bet. I don't think it's favored, but in a weird way it is. If that makes any sense. It's not favored statistically, but in my gut, because I'm kind of like W, I like to think with my gut.
He's going, man. You truly are a degenerate, Aaron Bruski.
I like the bets that are like 40%. You know,
getting underdog odds on that one. We didn't even need to do lightning round, by the way, because we're at a point in the season now where a lot of people are out, and those that remain are just like hands behind their head, rolling along with all the stuff we've been doing all season long. So, yeah, cool, man.
I mean, Rashawn Holmes, man, that's all I gotta say. That is, I'm just having so much fun. I haven't even looked at his numbers, but he's been a top 20, top 30 player. Like, it's just so. Actually, you know, we'll throw Rashawn Holmes on that list because you're going to see Okafor come back. You're going to see, you know, possibly Joel Embiid come back, and so they will steal the thunder from Rashawn Holmes. Like, people will look at him and say, kind of like, well, he might not get the minutes. His game is so efficient, and his season-long free throw percentage will look like crap, but I think he can hit free throws. So if you have efficient shooting, really the only question for him will be the defensive and the money counting stats. I mean, he's got a decent, I bet he shoots more threes. Hopefully that doesn't etch away at his efficiency. And then you just hope you could get like 2 defensive stats per game out of him on the year. And he will be a top 25 player next year.
Yeah, I got to really, I like looking at my lineup too. Rashawn Holmes, over the last month, by the way, is a top 40 guy, which is, I mean, that's remarkable. This guy's steamrolling. And
well, he's the minute size, the sample size is small too. 28 minutes per game over the last 2 weeks. You know, top 30 numbers. I mean, what if he gets 31, 32? What if he plays 48 minutes per game?
What if? What a world it would be. Trevor Ariza, by the way, is a top 10 guy over the last week, so that's pretty.
Oh yeah, top 15 over the last 2 weeks. There's some crazy things going on. And LaMarcus Aldridge is a top 15 guy over the last 2 weeks.
So is Gorgie Jang.
Marvin Williams is up there. Marvin Williams is carrying teams in 9 cat leagues. Kristaps got, for some reason, like there was like some hate on Kristaps. I saw on one site said to drop him, and I was like, what? Yeah, top 24.
Unbelievable.
TJ Warren is beating me. He's top 24.
Yeah,
I've been anti TJ Warren forever. He's getting the best of me.
Yeah, he is. He's been very good, but you know, admittedly, he was decent, and then Eric Bledsoe was rested for the rest of the year.
Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard's the number 3 player over the last 2 weeks. He's been killing it.
He's looked really good lately too. He's looked angry. And this is why when, I think it was like 2 months ago, I forget who was on the podcast, and we were trying to predict who would make that 8 seed. And I think I went with Portland because they've been there, to use that expression. You want to go with
the team that's been there in that game against the Nuggets. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a simple explanation, such an ESPN talking heads kind of thing, but there is something to it. Guys that understand what takes place when everybody sort of ratchets it up to that full 100% mark that nobody ever shows in June or in January and February or December or whatever it is. But suddenly you got 10 games to make the playoffs, and the teams that have been in the playoffs know what the whistle gets a little quieter. People start getting elbows to the grill. Guys drop that Cavs Bulls game yesterday was oddly playoff-like in that Kevin Love was being fully undressed, and he fouled out. I mean, he looked like a paper tiger in that ball game, and I think he needed somebody to poke him and go, they're calling this thing like the playoffs, so wake up, kid. Guys were getting clubbed. That was a scrum.
Yeah, the Warriors, I think if they officiated the Cavs series last year like they did the regular season, the Warriors win that thing going away, but they let everybody just grab and clinch and, you know, everything in between. And it's a different basketball game. And that's why when you look and you do your playoff analysis, you really have to like almost forget everything you saw in February and March and April and just kind of really just not even think about it in a weird way until you picture them beating the crap out of each other. And then you make your picks.
Last question. What's going on with Otto Porter?
I think he's got a hip issue. Like, I've seen him on film take a shot, hit the ground, come up. He's holding his hip. And so I just wonder, like, they would be. This is actually a great final question that maybe should have been in the earlier part of the show. Is
a treat for anybody who sticks around to the end.
Exactly. They have a team that's built around their starters, and so that would be a team that I think is especially susceptible to rest. Now, will Scott Brooks play the we're going to grind it out card, or will the players say we want to grind it out? That remains to be seen. But yeah, there's definitely a hip issue there for Otto Porter, and I would think, if that seeding gets settled, he and maybe even Marcin Gortat, who's not injured, by the way, would get some rest so they can regroup.
They have an interesting decision on their hands because the Wizards are an exceptionally good home team, and they've been pretty pedestrian on the road. I think they're 2 games under 500 on the road this year, so they're going to want home court wherever they can get it, but they also need their 3. They also need Otto Porter to be healthy because he's been a huge part of what they've been able to do this year. I mean, his shooting has been unbelievable. So I don't know. That's a really good question. What do we see take place in Washington? Brewski, you're back with the premium subscribers on Sunday evening with the waiver wire show. I guess that would be the last. Is that the last? Are you going to do one before the 3-day stretch?
Yeah, probably do one.
All right, penultimate waiver wire show.
Yeah. I think we're running through. I mean, I might have the. I think we'll have the Fantasy NBA Tonight guys maybe peel off at some point in time during next week. But I'll come back in for a last show, and then we'll pretty soon we'll be going into our postseason coverage, which there's going to be. I know we're having a couple meetings internally about what we're going to do for that, and it's just going to keep rolling on. What we try to do is we'll be like that player that works in the gym every day over the summer, and we'll just keep adding stuff and keep gaining ground.
Yeah, I'm just going to try to make sure that my 20-footer I'm going to back it up 2 feet and take the 3 ball.
I'm telling you, Dan, I'm the point guard for our team. I can handle it. I can't do anything else. So you gotta let me have that.
I'm a wizard with the clipboard, so whatever that takes.
I don't care that we actually have good basketball players here.
It ain't me. Next week, Brew, this is our last in-season.
Don't you say that, Dan. Don't you say that.
Last in-season one. We'll get some live ones going in the off-season just to catch up with everybody, but it might not be every single Friday. The news is sort of weird. And here at Hoop Ball, we're going to get some projects going that don't involve me and an unmade bed behind me. So welcome to my love palace, everybody. I hope you've enjoyed today's stay. He's at Aaron Brewski on Twitter. I'm at Dan Besbris. At Hoopball Tweets. Give them all a follow. I'm into the 900s all of a sudden. What did you do?
What I do is what you did, Dan.
Power of Oob Ball. I had a Twitter account for 6 years working in minor league baseball, and I think I had 600 followers. And in 1 year, one season at Oob Ball, that number's jumped by 50%. So maybe I'll make 1,000 push. Maybe that'll be the next thing that I beg for on the show. Again, at Dan Besbris, at Aaron Brewski, at Hoopball Tweets. Go to hoop-ball.com and see the lightning fast iteration of Hoopball. Folks, have a wonderful weekend. Bruce back with you Sunday. I'm back on Monday with our reverse chronological lightning round. This is Fantasy NBA Today. The week concluded. So long, everybody.